Let's go flying. Today we are at Boeing Field, KBFI, right next to wonderful city of Seattle. Flying Diamond DA40 XLS, which is a little different than most airplanes found in flight schools in the area that are using Cessna 172S or R. This one is a little bit more interesting in a sense that it has a constant speed propeller and of course has an IO 360 Lycoming engine, which means it is fuel injected and we don't have to worry about carb ice, which potentially would be an issue on a day like today with clouds and kind of colder temperatures. So taking off heading south from runway 14L. That's one of two runways at Boeing Field. This is the short runway, which is typically used for pattern work. So here we are about to take a left turn for crosswind, and at this point power is already preparing to cut power down to 18 inches, and I had already brought back the prop to 2400 RPM. So in this particular aircraft, we have an STC that allows us to actually keep RPM all the way on maximum until we don't want them to be at full maximum, which is when we reach pattern altitude. But it's just a little bit nicer for the engine to pull it back per the AFM or the flight manual. So now we are downwind. Downtown Seattle is just ahead of us. We're facing north, and the runway and the Boeing Field is off on the left. Right down our nose, you can kind of start to see a little bit of like a white spot. That is the VA hospital that's positioned on top of Beacon Hill. And normally it will be a good reference for pattern work around Boeing Field. Typically, when we are approaching to land on 1-4 left, or really 1-4 right, but again, from this direction, it would be atypical. So 1-4 left, we would be making a turn right in front of the hospital. I actually used to work there many years ago, and it is a little bit unnerving watching airplanes flying low and heading right for you. So typically, we don't want to be overflying the hospital. But today, air traffic control, the Boeing Tower, is going to call my base, and they're telling me to just continue downwind until they tell me to turn. So we're going to get a little bit past the VA hospital's building, which is now just off on the left side, passing the VA campus and heading right for downtown Seattle. You can start to see maybe the stadiums and just wonderful clouds and the skyscrapers of the Seattle city line ahead of us. So I think right now they're going to tell me that it's okay to turn base, and at this point I'm already thinking about configuring the plane for landing. Generally I would have done it a little bit earlier, but since we were extending, I kept the power in, did not deploy flaps, and just kind of stayed the course, flying at 1,000 feet MSL, which works for Boeing Field because field altitude is 22 feet. So we're basically at sea level, and generally pattern altitude is 1,000 feet above the ground. So in this case, it is 1,000 feet MSL. So at this point, we have flaps in one notch, configuring the engine, still have RPMs at 2,400, and now continue to just set up. In this plane, we're looking for about 71 to 73 knots on final and descending with, again, flaps in one notch and just controlling our descent rate with power a little bit. Once we are much closer and landing is assured, it's a good idea to go full flaps. Everything is working correctly. And at this point, we can push the prop all the way forward, maximum RPM. When it's fully in that position, it also acts as an air brake, believe it or not. So that will allow us to really slow down. I can take a much steeper angle and put the nose down and really kind of get the plane on the ground much more effectively. Something I forgot to mention is at this point we already have our fuel pump on, and that's a great checklist item to remember. It is an easy one to forget. So usually I will pull the fuel pump on when I go first notch of flaps. But you don't actually have to do it that way. You can do it a little bit later. The main thing here is if you lose your engine-driven pump, you have a backup, as well as being ready for a go-around. And the checklist actually calls for the fuel pump to be on for takeoff. So this is just one less item for us to worry about. Same goes for the prop. We want to go prop forward and ready for a go-around. And here we are in the flare. Here is the buzzer, and we are on the ground.